What actions would you take if those you held in the highest regard betrayed you completely, reveling in their deceit? This is my tale, and believe me, the journey is more incredible than you can imagine. Be sure to like, subscribe, and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the conclusion of this adventure. My name is Alex Cooper, and at 28 years old, I find myself compelled to share a sentiment that resonates deeply. If you've ever experienced the disillusionment of realizing that those you believed in held your worth in such low regard, then you will grasp the essence of my words. Throughout much of my existence, the concept of family was intertwined with the notion of safety. It was intended to signify communal feasts, a refuge during difficult moments, and that silent allegiance you rely on when all else seems precarious. At the very least, that was the conviction I wished to hold on to. Yet, the reality was much more grotesque. It wasn't until the night following my cousin's wedding that I truly grasped the extent of the decay lurking beneath the surface. The wedding, in its essence, was satisfactory, I suppose. In our family, my cousin Emily Cooper had always been regarded as the golden child, the one who seemed to glide effortlessly through life, untouched by any misstep. Each family gathering presented yet another chance to discuss her academic achievements, her professional aspirations, and the details of her impending nuptials. In the meantime, every endeavor I undertook was brushed aside as merely charming or fanciful. 2 years ago, I embarked on the journey of starting my own business, a modest, yet burgeoning venture to which I dedicated my all. Yet, my father, uncles, and even my grandmother regarded it as nothing more than a trivial pastime. At the wedding, the favoritism was nearly laughable. The speeches overflowed with admiration for Emily Cooper, while I found myself merely the cousin who had made an appearance. My work went unnoticed, and my efforts seemed to fade into the background, unacknowledged and unappreciated. It pierced through me, yet I maintained my composure, offering a courteous smile as I sipped the inexpensive champagne. I reassured myself that it was of no consequence. That is what I have consistently reminded myself. Yet, the reality is, it held significance. Each instance when I caught my father's gaze, a blend of disappointment and amusement danced in his eyes, as if I were merely an underachieving child rather than a grown man forging my own path. The moment held weight as relatives leaned in, their whispers filled with pride for Emily Cooper, all the while overlooking my presence at the table. I attempted to conceal those emotions throughout the wedding, yet they refused to remain hidden for long. That night, I navigated the roads home, fatigue weighing on me, yet a peculiar sense of relief washed over me, knowing it was finally behind me. As I slipped off my shoes and donned my comfortable sweats, I settled into my desk chair, preparing to glance at my emails one last time before drifting off to sleep. It was at that moment that I sensed something amiss. Initially, my banking app refused to load, and when it finally sprang to life, I found myself paralyzed. My account balance, utterly erased. All the hard-earned money, every ounce of savings I had painstakingly accumulated, vanished. Initially, I was convinced it must be a case of deceit. A hacker's touch, a glitch in the system. My heart raced as I perused the transactions, yet, what unfolded before my eyes rendered me utterly motionless. The withdrawals were not arbitrary. They were indeed transfers. Transfers flowed seamlessly into an account bearing a name I recognized all too intimately. Belonging to my father. A constriction gripped my throat, and my sight began to waver. I genuinely believed I might faint right there at my desk. For what felt like an eternity, I remained seated in the soft illumination of my laptop screen, murmuring to myself, "No, no, no, no." As I finally dialed my father's number, my hands trembled with such intensity that I struggled to press the buttons. He answered on the second ring, his voice steady, tinged with a hint of smugness. "Alex Cooper," he remarked, as if he had been anticipating this call all along. "What actions did you take?" I struggled to articulate. He moved forward without a moment's pause. "It was chosen for the family. You will endure." In an instant, it was done. Without apology. Without hesitation. Without shame. A wave of unease washed over me. A chill swept through my entire body, followed by a searing heat, as if I had been ignited from within. I attempted to voice my thoughts, yet the words became ensnared in my throat. He let out a chuckle, a deep, contented sound that sent shivers down my spine, and remarked, "Don't look so shocked. All that you possess, it ultimately originates from us, after all. Everything will turn out well." In a sudden rush of impulse, I rose to my feet with such urgency that my chair collided forcefully with the wall behind me. My voice trembled as I cried out, "Then you won't endure what comes next." I truly meant it. My father chuckled heartily. In the distance, other voices echoed softly, weaving through the air like whispers of a hidden conversation. Perhaps my uncle, and possibly my mother as well. All of them were complicit in the scheme. They found it amusing. They believed I was devoid of strength. The call concluded, their laughter reverberating in my ears, while I remained rooted in my living room, trembling so violently that breath eluded me. It was then that the sound struck, a resounding crash, reminiscent of thunder reverberating within the confines of the walls. The entire house appeared to shudder, and before I could fully comprehend the moment, the front door flew open with a forceful bang. The thud that shook my walls was not what I had anticipated. It was neither the police nor an ordinary break-in. It was my family, my father, Robert Cooper, and my younger brother, Ryan Cooper, stood in the doorway, exuding an air of ownership over the space. They simply walked in without so much as a knock. They stormed in, my father raising his hands as if he were stepping into a space he had already staked his claim to. "Relax, Alex Cooper," he said, gliding past me as if I were merely an inconsequential piece of furniture in his path. "We arrived to discuss this matter face to face. We hope to prevent you from acting impulsively." The word rash seared into my consciousness, as though I were an erratic child, prone to outbursts, as if the loss of my entire savings demanded my composure rather than their obligation to provide clarity. My Robert Cooper trailed closely, his resonant voice echoing throughout the space. "Gratitude is in order, Alex Cooper. Indeed, we are ensuring the security of the funds. Do you truly believe you can manage such a weighty responsibility? Really now? You've consistently shown a lack of caution in your decisions." The word careless pierced through the air, a familiar sting that echoed with the weight of years gone by. In opting out of the family business and channeling my energy into a startup rather than pursuing law school like Ryan Cooper, I found that every independent choice I made was cast in a light of recklessness or folly. With the smirk adorning my uncle's face, it became evident that they hadn't accepted the money out of necessity. They seized it, convinced that they possessed the rightful claim. Initially, Ryan Cooper remained silent, fidgeting awkwardly by the door, until his father gave him a gentle nudge. "Proceed and explain to your brother the importance of this matter." At last, my brother found his voice, a blend of arrogance and insecurity that had become all too familiar to me over the years. "Indeed, Dad is correct, Alex Cooper. The wedding, as it turns out, came with a hefty price tag. Emily Cooper was worthy of nothing less than the finest. She embodies the promise of this family, not you. You often speak of your company, yet it seems you struggle to maintain your own stability. In this manner, the funds are being utilized effectively." The breath escaped from my lungs, a fleeting whisper of life slipping away. The wedding of Emily Cooper. My life savings had dwindled to this, funding extravagant flower arrangements, an open bar, and a dress that likely surpassed the value of my car. A primal urge surged within me, begging for release in the form of a scream. I felt an overwhelming urge to expel them from my home, to assert that they had no claim to be there. Yet my father's voice sliced through my fury with the precision of a sharp blade. "Do not wear that expression of betrayal, Alex Cooper. You belong to this family, and with that comes the weight of sacrifice. One day, you will come to understand, when you cease the pursuit of illusions and embrace your true place." The essence of my position, I erupted, my voice rising beyond my anticipation. "What precisely is that role? What about the ATM? The jest that elicits laughter from all, as Emily Cooper basks in the accolades and Ryan Cooper receives the backing." Father's gaze sharpened, and his tone grew frigid. "Your purpose is to make a meaningful contribution. One does not have the privilege to inquire about the destination of the funds. It doesn't truly belong to you, after all. Every action you've taken, every chance you've embraced, it all began with us. Always remember that." The manipulation was a constant, an unchanging refrain in the symphony of their interactions. Every achievement I attained seemed to lead back to them. Securing a client was a testament to the persuasive skills instilled in me. My ability to save money stems from the lessons imparted to me about the significance of diligent effort. Nothing has ever belonged to me. No action of mine could exist independently. Robert Cooper struck my shoulder with a force that made me flinch. This too shall pass. One is in the bloom of youth. There is ample opportunity to reconstruct it anew. In the meantime, we shall ensure that the family name gleams with brilliance. The wedding of Emily Cooper marked merely the commencement of a grand tale. There are whispers circulating about its sheer perfection. In a sense, it all traces back to you. Take pride in that, filled with pride. He wished for me to take pride in having been stripped of my belongings for the sake of their facade. With newfound confidence, Ryan Cooper leaned against the wall, a smirk playing on his lips. Moreover, Alex Cooper, the limelight was never truly your domain. Your silence speaks volumes, a gentle whisper in a cacophony of noise. Allow the true leaders to take charge. It is often more advantageous to simply go with the flow. My fists tightened to the point where I feared my nails would pierce through my skin. Yet I remained motionless, my heart thundering within the confines of my chest. They believed they had silenced me for good. They believed I would accept this as I had accepted every previous slight, every insult, every dismissal. Dad finally settled onto my couch, crossing his legs as if he were the sovereign of the realm. With that matter resolved, it's time for you to sign over the remainder. Any investments, any savings carefully set aside. We will take care of it. In that manner, you shall resist the allure of squandering it. The room whirled around me. The remainder, they sought more than what they had already claimed. They desired it all. As I gazed upon their self-satisfied expressions, my father sprawled comfortably in my living room as if it were already his domain. A subtle understanding began to blossom within me. This transcended mere financial concerns. This was a matter of control. Concerning the obliteration of the remnants of my independence, I remained quiet, allowing them to believe they had triumphed once more. Yet within, a transformation occurred. I found myself no longer merely trembling. I found myself immersed in the art of planning. And that marked the final occasion my father misinterpreted my silence as a sign of weakness. That night, sleep eluded me, not even a moment. Once they departed, brimming with smugness and satisfaction, utterly convinced they had me at their mercy, I remained at my desk, fixated on the vacant account displayed on my laptop screen. My chest felt hollow, as if someone had extracted every last shred of hope I possessed. I found myself revisiting their words time and again. You will endure. Your lack of attention is evident. Transfer the remainder. Each syllable slithered beneath my skin, a venomous touch. As dawn broke, I found myself enveloped in a profound numbness. The incessant buzzing of my phone filled the air. Messages from family members. Conversations unfolded in group chats, celebrating the sheer beauty of Emily Cooper's wedding. Images capturing champagne flutes elevated in celebration. And then, as if struck by a blade to the core, I discovered that my father had shared a photograph online. Emily Cooper radiates joy in her white dress, with Ryan Cooper by her side and my father positioned in the center. The caption proclaiming, "Family comes first, forever. Kin." That word had never seemed so contorted. As the week unfolded, the betrayal grew more profound in ways I had never imagined. I ventured to the bank, harboring a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, I could undo the events that had transpired. As I found myself seated opposite the manager, a familiar face from my high school days, her gaze pierced through me, stirring a tumult of unease in my gut. "Alex Cooper," she uttered with caution. "Your father entered, carrying a stack of paperwork. Last year, you signed over the power of attorney, correct?" My heart came to a halt. What is this? Negative. Most certainly not. Yet, she glided a document over the desk, and there it lay, my signature. Yet, it did not belong to me. The lines trembled with uncertainty. Irregular. the appearance of my father's handwriting whenever he attempted to imitate another's style. In that moment, clarity washed over me, revealing the truth of the situation. It was a creation of his own making. He had gone to great lengths to fabricate my consent, seizing control of all that I possessed. A wave of dizziness washed over me. This cannot be real. Is it possible for you to honor this, or not? Yet the manager merely shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. The processing for Alex Cooper has already been completed. The accounts stand empty. From a legal standpoint, it appears to be authorized. I emerged from the bank, enveloped in a fog, the sunlight striking me like a sudden revelation, each step weighed down by the stark truth that my own father had betrayed me through deceit, while the very system meant to uphold justice turned a blind eye. Upon my return home, the circumstances took a turn for the worse. A substantial envelope rested on my doorstep. Within, meticulously arranged, lay a fresh contract, adorned with my father's distinctive handwriting throughout. A familial pact was established, stipulating that I channel all forthcoming business profits into a shared account under his dominion. At the bottom lay a signature line, my name already elegantly inscribed there. Once more, it was crafted anew, and concealed within the folds of the contract lay a handwritten note. Cease your resistance, Alex Cooper. You're only complicating matters for yourself. Act in the best interest of the family. My hands trembled uncontrollably, causing the papers to slip from my grasp and scatter across the floor. I simply gazed at them, warmth swelling behind my eyes. This was more than mere theft. This was more than mere favoritism. This was a purposeful, strategic action aimed at robbing me of all that I held dear, my savings, my enterprise, my autonomy, and he had accomplished it all with that same smug grin. Yet, the genuine turning point arrived 2 nights thereafter. I ventured to see my grandmother, the sole figure in the family whom I believed could comprehend my struggles, perhaps even defend me. She sat in her floral armchair, the very one she'd cherished since my childhood, her delicate hands resting gracefully in her lap. For a fleeting instant, I believed I detected a glimmer of sympathy in her gaze. Margaret Cooper, I murmured. My father emptied my accounts. He created a facsimile of my signature. He is attempting to seize my enterprise. I find myself at a loss, unsure of the path forward. Her fingers brushed against mine as she sought my hand. Her touch was gentle. For the briefest moment, I entertained the notion that she might offer me solace. Yet, her words pierced through me more profoundly than I ever anticipated. Alex Cooper, let's not be overly theatrical. Your father possesses the wisdom of experience. He is safeguarding you from your own impulses. One ought to embrace a sense of gratitude. Filled with gratitude. My throat constricted. Even she found herself aligned with him. Even the individual I believed would stand by me. As I departed from her abode, a profound silence enveloped me. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily upon my chest. It felt as though she had been lost to me on 2 separate occasions. Once as a figure of wisdom and warmth, and again as a confidant I could rely on. Upon returning home that night, I was met with one last devastating revelation. A message redirected from my father's account. A notification had arrived from the state business registry. The enterprise I had painstakingly crafted from the ground up, the culmination of countless sleepless nights and unwavering dedication, was no longer mine to claim. The mantle of ownership had been passed into his hands. I gazed at the screen, my sight clouded by tears I stubbornly held back. My father had taken everything from me. It's about more than just the money. Beyond mere savings, yet, my essence, my means of sustenance, my destiny, and in that instant, a fragment of my soul shattered. The young lad who had perpetually ingested the barbs of scorn, who had consistently embraced the role of silence. A person who had perpetually been labeled as gentle. He had vanished. What remained was an enveloping silence. And beneath that stillness, a flame that refused to extinguish until I reclaimed all that was lost. Rock bottom unfolds gradually. Piece by piece, it seeps in gradually, second by second, until one day you awaken to find that you are no longer on your feet. As you lie on the floor, your gaze is drawn upward to a world that appears resolute in its intent to overwhelm you. In the weeks that followed my father's complete reclamation of all that was mine, I found myself in a profound state of reflection. Initially, there was a sense of denial. I found myself pondering the possibility of an error, a hidden escape, a means to reverse the harm done. Countless nights were consumed by my attempts to reach out to lawyers, only to hear the same refrain echo back to me. The documents appeared legitimate, the transfers had been executed, and without an extended, costly legal confrontation, there was little recourse available. Despite my struggles, they claimed my father possessed greater resources, more influence, and a wider circle of support. It was merely one individual. Then arrived the bills, the cost of my dwelling, the services that provide essential resources, the loan I secured for the equipment essential to my company. Each echo of the life I once crafted emerged, insisting on payments I could no longer afford. I parted with whatever I could, the device that accompanies me on my journeys through the digital realm, the device that captures my world, even the timepiece bestowed upon me for my college graduation. Every item seemed to carve away at a fragment of my very essence. My existence revolved around instant noodles and canned soup, the fridge in the corner humming a lonely tune of emptiness. The most challenging aspect wasn't the gnawing hunger or the overwhelming fatigue, it was the utter humiliation. Friends I once aided in their endeavors inquired about my unexpected withdrawal from social gatherings. Clients who had placed their trust in me for their projects reached out via email, inquiring about the sudden silence from my company. I was unable to reveal the reality that my very own family had hollowed me out from within. I remained silent. The silence consumed my reputation whole. One evening, weary and filled with a sense of urgency, I stepped into my parents' home. Uncertainty lingers in my mind, leaving me to ponder what I truly sought. Perhaps a fragment of humanity, perhaps an opportunity to plead. They sat at the dining table, laughter bubbling over glasses of wine, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. My father gazed at me, his expression adorned with that familiar, patronizing smile. "Ah, Alex Cooper. At long last, the decision to pay a visit has been made. Have you finally regained your clarity?" I took a deep breath. "Father, I implore you. All that was once mine has been claimed by you. My company is no longer in existence. I'm struggling to gather enough to cover my rent. I require a return of something. Anything at all." He reclined in his chair, gently swirling the contents of his wine glass. "Alex Cooper, this is the embodiment of responsibility. Do you believe that existence revolves around pursuing your modest aspirations? Negative. Life revolves around the essence of sacrifice. Understanding will come when you cease your resistance against us. Until that moment arrives, this is the lesson you must embrace." My mother sat silently beside him, her eyes glinting with a chill as she nodded. Robert Cooper wore a broad smile. Ryan Cooper wore a sly grin. The room enveloped me, its walls constricting with an unyielding grip. As I departed that night, an overwhelming sense of diminishment enveloped me, more profound than any I had ever experienced. As I navigated the road home, my fingers clenched the steering wheel tightly, turning my knuckles a ghostly white, each breath coming in shallow gasps. As I drove into the silence of my vacant apartment, tears had long since abandoned me. I found myself seated in stillness, gazing into the shadows, attuned to the profound quietude surrounding me. Days merged seamlessly into one another. I ceased responding to calls. I ceased the habit of checking emails. I drifted through existence, a mere specter of my former self. Rock bottom wasn't a crash. It was a slow descent into quicksand. With each struggle, I found myself descending further into the abyss. Yet, there lies a curious truth about quicksand. In time, the struggle ceases. You remain motionless. You inhale and exhale. When tranquility envelops you, clarity of thought emerges. The moment marked the beginning of the planning phase. Softly, in the recesses of my thoughts, nearly without my awareness at the outset, a fleeting thought would weave its way in. Your signature has been forged. What other vulnerabilities have they laid bare? One more reflection. You are underestimated by them. They have always been there. Their vulnerability lies here. I began to jot down my thoughts. In the stillness of the night, as the city slumbered, I would find myself at my desk, a humble notebook in hand, inscribing every fragment of knowledge I possessed. Chronicles, exchanges, identities, motifs. Though modest in size, it held the promise of growth, a cartography of treachery. Amidst the weariness and the sting of embarrassment, an unfamiliar sensation started to take root. Determine. They believed they had shattered my spirit. They believed I was done for. Yet, hitting rock bottom possesses an uncanny ability to illuminate the essence of what truly holds significance. All that remained was the void of loss, and that rendered me perilous. The ascent back was neither swift nor graceful. Initially, it felt akin to attempting to stir after shattering every bone within your frame. Gradual, excruciating, yet essential. I understood that confronting my family directly was not an option at that moment. They possessed wealth, power, and the self-satisfied assurance of those who thought themselves beyond reach. I took the only course of action available to me. I faded into the shadows, quietly reconstructing my world. I seized opportunities for work, wherever they presented themselves. Freelance opportunities, peculiar assignments for those who preferred not to inquire too deeply. I remained silent, lowered my gaze, and conserved every penny I could muster. The dishes remained uncomplicated. The nights stretch on endlessly. Yet, after a long stretch of emptiness, a sense of purpose began to seep back into my life. Every minor payment, every skill acquired, served as a building block in the structure of something grander. An early opportunity presented itself when a former client contacted me, inquiring if I would consider accepting a discreet, small project. "It matters not what name you choose," he declared. "I have complete faith in your ability to handle this perfectly." That line lingered in my mind. He was the sole figure in whom he placed his trust. It seems my family has taken away all that I held dear. Yet, they were unable to strip away the trust I had cultivated, the dedication I embodied, or the intellect they had spent years undermining. I have transformed into a new version of myself. I established a new company, adopting a name that bore no connection to my family legacy. I utilized a friend's address as the designated mailing location for my business, and I crafted my endeavors discreetly, one project at a time. Silence reigns, devoid of announcements, social media updates, or any hint of self-promotion. Simply focus on the task at hand, quiet, unwavering, and unyielding. As they sipped wine and reveled in tales of Emily Cooper's flawless wedding, I found myself immersed in contracts, crafting designs until the early hours, and engaging with clients in the hushed corners of quaint cafes. The funds began to seep in, gradually transforming into a steady stream. Wealth was not my companion, quite the opposite, yet I found myself on the move once more. With every invoice settled, I sensed a restoration of my dignity. As the months slipped by, the quietude became my ally. My family believed they had subdued me completely. They believed I had exhausted all my resources, unaware that they had overlooked my quiet resilience. In that very shadow, my strength was quietly blossoming. A pivotal moment arrived when a project I had undertaken for a modest local enterprise attracted the interest of a more prominent company. They extended their hand, clearly taken by the quality of my work, and presented me with a contract that promised to sustain me for years to come. I recall gazing at the email, my hands shaking, not out of fear this time, but from the exhilarating surge of potential. I acquiesced, naturally, yet with a measured and hushed demeanor. Every document, every cent, I safeguarded meticulously, shielded from the avaricious grasp of those who had previously sought to leave me vulnerable. With the expansion of my endeavors, my self-assurance blossomed in tandem. The burden of shame I had been shouldering started to unravel. No longer was I merely existing. I was crafting a future defined by my own desires. My bank account gradually swelled once more, yet this time I dispersed the funds across various locations, all under names my father remained blissfully unaware of. He was unable to make contact with this, not at this moment, never again. With every triumph, a realization began to dawn on me, one that had previously eluded my awareness. Respect was earned, not through lineage or heritage, but through the essence of who I am. Clients have graciously directed their friends to me. My partners sought my perspective. For the first time, I found myself no longer cast as the invisible son or the disappointment at the dinner table. I was a voice deserving of attention. It was a curious twist of fate that my family remained blissfully unaware. They believed I was nursing my wounds, navigating through existence, just managing to survive. And I allowed them to believe that. As I beheld them, I embodied the essence of the struggling, beaten-down son. I allowed my father to impart his wisdom on the subject of responsibility. Allow Ryan Cooper to revel in his superior opportunities. Allow Margaret Cooper to gently pat my hand and remind me to embrace gratitude. I consumed it entirely, my expression remaining utterly neutral. As they lounged in their plush seats, reveling in their self-assured delusions, I ascended, soaring higher and swifter than their limited gaze could perceive. As I found myself perched upon that unseen ladder, gazing down at those who had thrust me into the soil, a vital realization dawned upon me. They had not merely taken from me. They bestowed upon me the most precious gift imaginable, inspiration, a flame that would persist endlessly until justice was rightfully claimed. A whisper began, one that was never intended for my ears. For months, I had maintained a careful distance from the family, appearing only when it was absolutely essential. I performed my role with precision, shoulders drawn in, weary eyes, and wallets that were, or so it seemed, devoid of any funds. In their eyes, I remained the son grappling with his challenges, yet to grasp the wisdom of his journey. Yet, hidden behind that facade, my new venture was flourishing. The contract I had secured had unlocked opportunities for even grander endeavors. As my father wore a smirk at family dinners, I found myself orchestrating 5-figure payments into accounts he was blissfully unaware of. Then arrived the celebration of Emily Cooper's engagement. Indeed, she had already celebrated the wedding. My savings had been completely depleted to finance it. Yet again, an occasion had arisen. A fresh pretext for them to showcase their affluence and dominance. Reluctance tugged at my heart, yet a whisper of understanding reminded me that remaining informed was the key to staying ahead of the game. As I navigated through the throng, a drink cradled in my hand, I embraced the art of invisibility. It was at that moment that I first caught the sound. My father and Robert Cooper stood near the back patio, their voices hushed, yet still audible. The deal must be finalized soon. Robert Cooper murmured, "Should the figures fail to align, the investors will undoubtedly depart. We have invested far too much into this already." "There's no need for concern," my father said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Alex Cooper's wealth extends far beyond their awareness. They believe we have assets prepared and ready. We shall find a way to make it happen." I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. Are there any investors? Are there any offers available? This transcended the mere event of Emily Cooper's wedding. My savings had been channeled into an alternative venture, one so fraught with risk that hushed conversations about it lingered in the shadows. I crept nearer, mindful of remaining unnoticed. "What happens if the audit raises a flag?" Robert Cooper insisted. "The exchanges, the autographs. If anyone dares to dig too deep, they won't." My father snapped. "Should they proceed, it will be Alex Cooper who bears the consequences. All of it is registered in his name, never in mine. He lacks the resolve to confront it." The words struck me with the force of a sudden blow. He had not only taken from me, but he had also orchestrated a scenario that cast me as the scapegoat. If their purported agreement fell apart, and the investors revealed deceit, I would be the one left to bear the consequences. I departed from that conversation, my heart racing, a tempest swirling within me. At last, I beheld the complete scene before me. This was more than mere greed. It was a calculated act of exploitation. My father had not merely emptied my accounts. He had linked my name to their dubious transactions, wagering that I would remain too battered to stand up for myself. Yet, unbeknownst to him, as he perceived me as weak, I had been quietly amassing my own strength. With the establishment of my new company, I found myself tapping into resources that had previously eluded me. Attorneys who genuinely held me in regard, accountants skilled in uncovering concealed figures, clients who placed their trust in me, revealing connections in influential circles. With the expansion of my contracts came a deeper comprehension of business frameworks, the intricacies of loopholes, and the delicate connections that bound agreements. One evening, as I sat at my desk with the familiar, inexpensive notebook that had accompanied me for months, I began to weave the threads together. The investment deal between my father and uncle lacked solidity. It stood as a fragile edifice, a delicate assembly of dreams and uncertainties. With a wealth of knowledge at my disposal, I found myself poised to tip the scales with just a single, decisive push. Yet, I refrained from exerting any pressure. Not at this moment. Revenge transcends mere action. It embodies a deeper, more intricate narrative. It's about delivering a blow when they are least prepared, when the impact will resonate the deepest. Thus, I commenced the act of gathering, silently, with precision, akin to a predator laying its snares under the cover of night. I gathered each fragment of evidence that crossed my path. Emails were inadvertently forwarded, fragments of dialogue caught in passing, business documents haphazardly abandoned in drawers during family gatherings. Every detail found its place in an expanding file, meticulously arranged, biding its time for the moment I would put it to use. And then arrived the instant that solidified my determination. A client with considerable stature, someone whose influence surpassed even my father's wildest aspirations, leaned across the table one afternoon and remarked, "You've got a sharp mind, Alex Cooper. Have you ever pondered the possibilities that could unfold with the right support?" For the first time in weeks, a smile graced my lips. With his support, I would transcend the role of merely a son embroiled in a family conflict. I would stand as a man surrounded by allies, equipped with resources, and wielding the kind of power my father had perpetually insisted I was missing. For the very first time in my existence, the equilibrium was tilting. They believed they had laid me to rest. Yet, I found myself unburied. I found myself rooted in place. At this moment, I stood poised to evolve into an unexpected force, one that would catch them entirely off guard. Revenge, I discovered, transcends mere anger. Anger ignites with a fierce intensity, consuming all in its path and leaving behind a trail of recklessness. True revenge lies in the art of patience, silently crafting the web until the time arrives to draw it taut and observe your foe's struggle. When that moment finally came, I found myself at peace, strikingly serene. It began as a mere whisper. Delicate gestures, the sort that goes unnoticed initially. I started to divulge fragments of information regarding my father and uncle's investment deal to those who needed to hear it. Not in a straightforward manner, not in a manner that reflected upon myself. Subtle prompts directed at those in authority, auditors who reveled in the pursuit of discrepancies, rivals poised to seize upon the slightest hint of vulnerability. It resembled the delicate act of scattering breadcrumbs, each path converging upon the decayed heart that my family had labored to conceal. In the interim, I established my own foothold. A client of mine, possessing considerable influence, had graciously introduced me to individuals well-versed in the art of asset protection, ways to protect your earnings, methods for transferring funds in a manner that remains concealed from those beyond the inner circle. For the first time in my life, I found myself thriving rather than merely existing. I found myself enveloped in a protective cocoon. Should my family attempt to pursue me once more, they would discover naught to claim. The true blow was delivered during a quarterly family dinner. I maintained the facade, continuing to embody the role of the beleaguered son, burdened shoulders and a subdued voice. Father cherished those meals, for they provided him with a platform to shine. At the head of the table, he commanded attention, a glass of wine cradled in his hand, regaling everyone with tales of how his acumen was the lifeline for the family. On that night, he exuded an air of particular smugness. "It is indeed a relief that Alex Cooper has finally ceased his indulgence in trivial pursuits," he proclaimed with a raised voice, ample to elicit laughter from everyone at the table. "He is, at long last, discovering the profound truth that family holds the utmost priority. Is that not correct, my boy?" I surveyed their expressions, some smirking, others nodding, and a few casting glances of pity in my direction. For a fleeting instant, I allowed the silence to linger, permitting them to revel in their self-assured delusions. In that moment, a smile graced my lips. It was not the fractured grin they had anticipated, but rather a serene, unwavering smile that caused a few of them to shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You are correct, Father." I spoke with a steady tone. "Family indeed takes precedence. I felt it was important for you to be aware of something before it reaches you through another source." Silence enveloped the room. I retrieved a tidy folder from my bag and gracefully slid it across the table. Within lay the replicas of the counterfeit documents. My signature, rendered in my father's unsteady script, the transactions directed to accounts within his dominion, the shell corporations through which he and Robert Cooper had been channeling funds, documents filled with proof, each bearing the authoritative marks of lawyers and auditors who had discreetly confirmed every detail on my behalf. Amusingly enough, I pressed on, my tone steady, nearly casual. "It appears that the act of forging your own son's signature remains a violation of the law. And diverting his funds into a deceitful scheme? It appears that the situation is not particularly favorable when examined closely, particularly when investors begin to inquire about the true destination of their funds." My father's face lost all its color. Robert Cooper sputtered, his hand darting towards the folder, yet I held it back with a calm resolve. "Do not fret," I remarked, my voice cutting through the tranquility with a keen edge. "The appropriate individuals are already in possession of copies. Indeed, they have possessed them for several weeks now. I felt it was important for you to be informed before the calls begin to flood in." The stillness enveloped everything. A heavy blanket of quiet that pressed down on the world. Ryan Cooper fixed his gaze upon me. The playful smirk vanished, giving way to an expression of sheer astonishment. Emily Cooper shifted uneasily in her seat, momentarily devoid of the spotlight that usually came to her rescue. The fork in my grandmother's hand clattered against her plate, a sharp sound that echoed through the room. At last, my father uttered a word, his voice a hushed whisper, quaking with rage. "Surely, you wouldn't take that step." I leaned in closer, my gaze fixed intently on his. "I have already completed that task." It was not a cry. It lacked any sense of drama. It was a straightforward, irrefutable reality. The aftermath unfolded gradually, yet I could perceive the fissures emerging right before me at the dinner table. My father's hand trembled as he placed his glass on the table. Robert Cooper's face flushed a perilous crimson. For the first time in my life, I found myself standing tall, no longer the one to shrink beneath their gaze. They were diminishing beneath my gaze. What could possibly be the most delightful aspect? I had more to say. 2 days later, the call commenced. It first reached my ears through the soft murmurs of our family group chat. One of the investors had posed questions to my Robert Cooper. They had insisted on evidence regarding the whereabouts of the funds, yet the figures failed to align. Subsequently, another message arrived. Father had not arrived at his workplace. As the week drew to a close, the floodgates had swung wide open. Auditors descended upon their accounts with relentless scrutiny. Investors withdrew their support. Suddenly, those whom they had proudly claimed to have impressed were now insisting on answers. I found myself entirely at ease, requiring no effort whatsoever. The net I had woven constricted of its own accord. Initially, my father attempted to reach me, leaving a series of messages in his wake. His tone fluctuated with each voicemail, raging in one, imploring in the next, attempting to evoke guilt in another. "Alex Cooper, you are bringing turmoil to the family. Are you aware of the consequences of your actions? You are unraveling our very essence." Yet, I remained silent. Not a single time. Robert Cooper lacked the finesse. One evening, he arrived at my apartment, his fists striking the door with such urgency that my neighbors began to peer out into the hallway. His complexion was ashen, beads of sweat forming on his brow. "This situation demands your attention, Alex Cooper." He let out a sharp hiss as I finally pried the door open. "We shall provide you with a share. We shall set things aright. Simply retrieve the evidence." I allowed him to go on, his words pouring forth in a frantic rush. As he came to a halt, I met his gaze with unwavering intensity and spoke softly. "This is me fixing it." With a decisive motion, I shut the door before him. After that, the unraveling occurred swiftly. My father has been unceremoniously ousted from the board of the company he had long taken pride in leading. Within mere months, Robert Cooper found himself filing for bankruptcy. Ryan Cooper, once dependent on their unwavering support for every aspect of his life, now faced the daunting challenge of seeking employment for which he felt utterly unqualified. Emily Cooper, whose idyllic wedding had been financed by my pilfered savings, came to the unsettling realization that her fairy tale existence was constructed upon funds that had vanished into thin air. Even my grandmother, who had once brushed aside my pleas for assistance, was forced to witness the empire she had cherished crumble into nothingness. In the interim, I thrived. My new company flourished, seemingly impervious to the surrounding scandals. Clients placed their trust in me more than ever, captivated not only by the quality of my work but also by the quiet strength I embodied. The friends I believed I had lost re-emerged, not from a place of pity, but from a wellspring of authentic respect. For the first time, I found myself standing on solid ground, a ground that I had crafted with my own hands. The final moment I beheld my father, he was no longer the imposing presence that had taken everything from me. He was not the man with the self-satisfied smile and the wine glass cradled in his hand. He sat solitary in the diner, shoulders drooping, gazing into a cup of coffee that had long since lost its warmth. At first, he overlooked my presence. But when our gazes finally locked from across the room, a flicker passed through his expression, first recognition, then a shadow of shame. He parted his lips, ready to utter a word, yet I gently shook my head in response. Silence enveloped the moment, leaving no words to bridge the chasm between them. I exited in silence, the gentle chime of the bell above the diner door echoing softly in my wake. For the first time in my life, I felt unburdened, free from the weight I had once carried for him. My family had stripped away everything I held dear. Yet in their attempts to shatter my spirit, they inadvertently bestowed upon me a treasure far more valuable than wealth or validation: liberty. As I ventured into the crisp night air, a smile graced my lips, not the peculiar, silent grin they once ridiculed, but a genuine one, for they had at last grasped the truth I had held for months. I have never been the fragile one. They existed,